If your ancestors came from Kingston or Port Royal, Jamaica, what if I told you that hidden documents exist that show exactly which African ethnic groups arrived together on the same ships? Documents that haven't been properly analyzed in decades. And what you're about to discover could completely change how you understand your family's origin story. The year is 1817. Jamaica is a thriving sugar colony, and the British government has just implemented a new registration system for enslaved people. But here's what makes this moment in history so extraordinary. These registers didn't just record names, they recorded something far more valuable. They recorded ethnicity. African ethnic groups, Congo, Yoruba, Igbo, Mandinka, Fulani, and dozens of others, all carefully documented in the official records. But most genealogy researchers have completely overlooked this. Why? Because they don't know where to look, or they don't understand how to interpret what they're seeing, because the information is scattered across multiple registers and archived in ways that make it nearly invisible to modern researchers. Until now, the 1817 Jamaican registers represent one of the most underutilized historical sources in existence. And if your family is from Kingston or Port Royal, there's a very real possibility that your direct ancestors are named in these documents, with their African ethnicity recorded right there on the page. Think about what this means. You've probably spent years tracing your family back, getting stuck, hitting dead ends, your genealogy stopping abruptly around the slave trade era, and then nothing. You can't go further. The records don't exist, or so you've been told, but they do exist, in a form you might not expect. What these registers actually reveal is migration patterns. They show which African ethnic groups were arriving in Jamaica together, which means if you know who traveled with your ancestors, you can begin to understand their likely origins, their roots, possibly even the ports they departed from on the African coast. The Yoruba people. The records show them concentrated in certain parishes at certain times. The Igbo, similarly clustered in ways that tell a story. The Congo people show different patterns entirely, and when you map these patterns, when you cross-reference the dates, when you look at which people arrived together on the same vessel or in the same shipment, a picture emerges, a real picture of actual family networks that survived the Middle Passage. This is profound because genealogy is about connection. It's about understanding who you are by understanding who came before you. And the traditional approach stops short. It stops at the Caribbean shore. But these registers are a bridge. They're an incomplete bridge, yes, but they're a bridge nonetheless back toward Africa. Now, I need to be clear about something. These registers don't name the ship. They don't always tell you the exact port of origin, but they give you something that's almost equally valuable. They give you ethnic group information combined with arrival timing, and they give you something else entirely that most people miss, the likelihood of kinship networks. When multiple people of the same African ethnic group arrived in Jamaica within weeks or months of each other, what does that suggest? It suggests possible family connection, or at minimum, it suggests they were in proximity to each other during capture and transport. They were on the same vessel, possibly. They arrived at the same port. This is data that genealogists have not systematically studied. Here's what you need to know about the registers themselves. They were mandated by the British Parliament. Each enslaved person was meant to be registered by the plantation or property owner they worked for. The information includes name, sometimes age, ethnic designation, and arrival date if they arrived during slavery in Jamaica rather than being born there. But here's the catch. Not all registers survived, and not all records were properly maintained. Kingston and Port Royal, being major ports, have particularly good documentation because they were important administrative centers, but the records are fragmented. Some are in the National Archives in Kew, others in the Jamaica Archives, some in university collections. This is why so many researchers simply don't find them, and this is where interpretation matters. The ethnic designations weren't standardized. Scribes used different terms. Sometimes they abbreviated. Sometimes they made phonetic approximations of African ethnic groups that were unfamiliar to English speakers. Coromantee, for instance. That's one of the most common terms you'll see in these registers. Coromantee refers to people from the Gold Coast, particularly the Fonte and Akan groups. But you won't know that unless you understand the historical context, unless you know what the scribes were actually writing down. The same with terms like Manding, that's Mandinka people, traders and nobles from West Africa, or Chamba, or Fula, or Wida. Each of these terms is a gateway back toward a specific region of Africa, a specific ethnic group, a specific origin story. When you see multiple people listed as Yoruba in Kingston registers from 1817, and they arrived within a year of each other, you're looking at a pattern. That pattern means something. It means you can start building a hypothesis about your family's origin. You can begin researching Yoruba history, Yoruba genealogical practices, the specific lineages and family structures that would have existed in early 1800s Nigeria, because that's where your ancestors likely came from. But this is only the beginning of what these registers can tell you. There's another layer entirely, the spatial layer. Where these people were located within Kingston and Port Royal matters, because certain ethnic groups were assigned to certain work zones, certain plantations, certain gangs. This wasn't random, and mapping this data reveals something remarkable. You can actually see ethnic clustering. You can see where Igbo people tended to be located, compared to where Congo people were located. And this tells you something about the economics of the slave trade, about supply and demand, about which ethnic groups were more prized for specific labor. This is dark history, but understanding it is part of understanding your ancestry. The registers also contain something else most researchers don't exploit. They contain testimony about African-influenced naming practices that persisted into the Caribbean. Some enslaved people maintained their African names despite enslavement. Some created new names that referenced their African heritage. When you see patterns in names across the registers, when certain names consistently appear in connection with certain ethnic groups, you can use that to triangulate information, to build a more complete picture. Now here's what you should do right now if your family is from Kingston or Port Royal. First, locate your ancestors' names in any available slave registers. This might be on the websites of university archive projects. It might require direct contact with the Jamaica archives. It might mean looking at published compilations. Many researchers have already transcribed portions of these registers, though the work is ongoing and incomplete.